Poll watchers play an integral part in elections, but who are they and how can you spot them?
6 News' Philip Catalfamo talked to the Douglas County Elections Office to answer those questions for us.
On November 5th, all registered Nebraskans will cast their vote in the 2024 general election. While at your polling place, you might see a few people observing the process. They're called poll watchers.
Poll watchers are poll watchers. They're not there to assist or interfere. They're just there to watch.
A poll watcher must be a registered Nebraska voter or representing a state-based, national, or international election monitoring organization like Civics Nebraska. They must also wear an ID badge, making it clear to you who they are and who sent them. That ID will say they're an official poll watcher at the top. It will also include election date and type, their name, and the name of the person or organization they represent. It's also important to note poll watchers are there to observe only.
They have to maintain an 8-foot distance from books, ballots, voters, all of those types of things. And then if they see a problem or perceive a problem, they're informed to call either our office or the organization they're with, and then we'll research it and take care of it on the back end. But poll watchers are not to interfere or interact in any way with poll workers or voters on election day.
If you see someone standing inside or near your polling place, ask to see their badge. If they don't have one or they're lingering, take note and report them to officials or police. Granted, not everyone who might be around is there for a nefarious reason.
They may be waiting for somebody inside. We do have curbside voting, so they may be waiting for our staff. They may be studying on their phone or on a paper ballot before they come in. So there's lots of possibilities.
But if something seems suspicious, report it. Voter intimidation is illegal in the state of Nebraska.
Well, Cruz says poll watchers will be out on election day only, and they should not be at polling places or the election office right now. If you're interested in learning about how to become a poll watcher yourself or voting in general, you can contact your local county elections office.